So Enver, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we go into leadership, can you share with us a little bit about your own backgrounds? Where exactly did you grow up?
Well, my hometown is a small place in Cape Town called Mitchell's Plain. It's a area that was what we refer to commonly as a township. That's where I've kind of grown up, lived life's hard knocks. And I think it's actually prepared me created quite a good foundation for me to where I am today in business.
And tell us, where did you start your career?
Well, after graduating from university, where I actually studied a BSc in computer science and mathematical statistics, the first job I got was actually working in Johannesburg for about 3 years for IBM. I was responsible for looking after the networks of South African breweries and a few other major corporates. And thereafter, I was also working for companies like Eskom before the load shedding. So clearly, I at least had done something right. And then I've also worked for financial services for Nedbank. And then I was head of operations for a small home loans business called Integer, who took on the big four banks about 5-6 years ago. And yeah, I was part of that team that took that on.
And can you tell us, as you grew up, what was your dream career?
Originally, my dream career was to be a pilot for South African Airways. And I vividly remember, I think I was probably about 6 or 7, when I said to my mom, I want to become a pilot. And I decided to write a letter with her help to South African Airways, indicating I would like to be a pilot. And is there any programs for kids, like young cadets or something that I could be part of? And months had gone past and I have never received the letter. And I think I was probably around 2021 when I was at university. And I had a conversation with my mom reminding her of, my aspiration back then. And she sat me down and she actually shared with me quite a sobering story, was that she did receive feedback from SAA probably about a few weeks after I'd sent the original letter. And why she didn't share with me, because the feedback from SAA was that I could not become a pilot because I was colored. I didn't have the necessary skills, and therefore there was no opportunity for me to actually become part of it. And I think that for me was one of the probably first sobering experiences of apartheid. But what it did is actually motivated me to try and break down those barriers at some stage. And I think I've always been focusing and destined to work in some form of transformation within tourism.
Right. Now, Enver, you had a very illustrious career. You're sitting on a number of national boards. I believe you're sitting on the board of SA Tourism, the Graining Council, and the Robben Island Museum. Looking back over your career, can you tell us who inspired you to reach further?
It has to be my mother. My mother was a single parent, and she had about 5 kids. And the challenge with that is that how do you keep your kids motivated about the future? And what she taught us was hard work. It's waking up early, doing what is required, sometimes struggling, but never forgetting your dream and your passion. And the thing is that it's about motivating oneself to look after and drive your own future. And I think that's been always the person that helped me to kind of focus on what could be rather than what is. And yeah, it has to be my mom.
And Enver, looking back over your career, would you say there was a major turning point or maybe a number of turning points?
I think there was quite a few turning points, but I think the one that always sits with me is after leaving the financial services sector, I took a bit of a sabbatical and I decided to follow Bafana around South Africa during the Confederations Cup in 2009.
Right.
And I think what it had actually done for me is that a couple of mates of mine, we jumped into his taxi and we kind of just followed Bafana around. And it took me to parts of South Africa I never knew existed, into homes of people that I would never have crossed paths with if I was sitting still within financial services or IT. And it humbled me to see how welcoming and open people were to share their homes and their food and everything with us, but more importantly, their stories. And I then said, you know what, I want to be part of this to some extent. And literally about 3-4 months later, I was headhunted to come work at Cape Town Tourism, and I've been here ever since.
Now, if I remember correctly, the Confed Cup, Bafana did quite well. I believe they proceeded to the semi-final, right? And
Yes.
I remember the game against Spain. I think they narrowly lost to Spain. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that was the game either in Rustenburg or the other one in Bloem. I can't exactly remember. I think for me it was more the excitement of following Bafana around rather than the games, because I think we were all looking forward to the World Cup. And we knew this was kind of almost a pilot of a dry run to see the skills here.
And tell us, what was your best memory from the World Cup from 2010?
I think the one best memory for me was just how everybody mobilized. How no matter what your political party is, your affiliation, your standing in life, your class, we all believe that this could be the thing that could change our lives forever. And I think to a large extent it did. And I think I sometimes miss that one local vision for what South Africa could be, and everybody kind of just rolling up their sleeves and getting on with it and making sure we just deliver something that's amazing, that the world kind of just goes and says, wow. And if I look back, like after it's been 2 World Cups now, and I still kind of say, well, what is going to be our next big World Cup? You know, that's going to get everybody mobilized, because it's the one thing that actually starts breaking down barriers and gives us all something common to move towards. So hopefully there's something else on the horizon for all of us.
And tell us, Enver, one thing that really stood out from Cape Town for me in 2010 was the Fan Mile. Your Fan Mile, I think, along Greenpoint. How did you experience that very special moment?
Well, I think the Fan Mile was the one way that we've recognized that we need to create almost a channel of engaging and creating and a build-up to the stadium. Yeah. Because I think it was a huge reliance on public transport, which was one of the things that was expedited within the city because of the World Cup. And the recognition that you want to almost create a pathway to the stadium and a build-up. And of course, we then arrange with public transport, not to kind of take people directly to the stadium, but allowing them to walk. And I think it's that also where we start creating people and communities to start engaging with each other. Because the thing is, what normally happens is people either drive up to a stadium, go and park, go to their seats and leave. And I think the Fan Mile also created other businesses along the route that could also benefit from tourism. You've got buskers that, you know, get an opportunity to also showcase what they have and the talent. So the Fan Mile was, I think you're absolutely right, one of the most significant moments. And it also allowed people to share and show their colors and kind of, you know, who they support. And I think that created also a lot more competitiveness, but, you know, in a very civil and hospitable way. And I think it's still great. And we still use it today to activate for specific events.
And tell us, Enver, what is driving you today?
I think what drives me is the fact that we continue as a destination. We continue to see lots more uncertainty and challenges around vulnerability of a destination like Cape Town. And the fact that we cannot become complacent and saying we are number one on many lists. And then when we kind of face a wobble, for example, the latest water issues, that we're almost going to panic. And for me, the thing is that what drives me, and specifically this destination, is saying there's going to be many more challenges out there, and we need to start thinking a lot smarter, a lot quicker to react, but also looking at our agility as a destination in order to capitalize on opportunities when they do arrive.
Now, Enver, let's talk about leadership. And I know it's a big question, but I have to ask you, what does the future of leadership mean to you?
Well, the future of leadership for me, I think, is one of those discussion points that's long overdue, because we keep fixating on the leadership of today, and we don't think really about the future of tomorrow, because we are so caught up in the now. And leadership is about doing that forward gazing, you know, and looking at saying, well, what are the different types of scenarios that could play out? What are the future disruptions that could occur? And then putting plans in place to either capitalize on those opportunities or to reduce those threats. But at the same time, it's also building the future leaders, because you need to at least have a 20-year horizon And I think that's what we sometimes forget as leaders, is that we get so caught up in the here and now that we sometimes don't focus on the future. And the future is also, who are the new leaders? Who are the ones that we are grooming in order to take forward the baton, and make sure that they still deliver on a vision to make South Africa, a great destination, globally competitive, where our unemployment and all the ills we sit with has been addressed through a continuous handing over of the baton. But again, we need to inspire, aspire, and perspire our future leaders.
I like that. Inspire, aspire, and perspire. Now, Enver, talking about future leaders, what is it that you've learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building future leaders?
The number one thing is listening. I think to a large extent, as leaders, we are always placed in positions where we have to speak. And what ends up happening is we speak so much that we fail to listen. And listening is an art that takes lots of practice. But it's also about humbling yourself and not trying to always have the answer. Because I think it's almost de facto that as leaders, you're almost place yourself in positions where you feel that you need to have an answer. And sometimes not having an answer is an answer in itself. So for me, listening is probably the most critical function of any leader or anybody who wants to be a leader. In listening, you begin to hear and see trends, patterns, and hopefully you can find solutions through actually asking the right questions, which sometimes leaders don't do.
And Enver, when you speak to aspiring leaders and maybe your own children, what is it that you tell them they should do for future-proofing their career?
The one thing is life is unpredictable and nothing is guaranteed. And you need to start looking and focusing on your own development. And as much as you want people to support you and give you things, you need to start looking at how do you prepare and equip yourself for the future. It's going to continue to be disruptive. It's going to change. It's going to move at a faster pace. And I think as even aspiring leaders is to not just look at your current circumstance, but create the future. And that requires a lot more self-discipline and not expecting handouts, which I think has unfortunately become some of the challenges we face today.
Now, Enver, let's talk about technology. And in your mind, what are the key technologies or maybe tools of technology that will enable the future leadership or the leadership of the future?
I think for me, the main thing around technology is that things are going to become a lot more predictable. And this is specifically how big data and data scraping is happening. And the biggest concern, and I think that's why global governments are looking at how do they start protecting people's information, becomes the number one risk. But also, I think, another opportunity, depending on how you look at it. For me, something that always kind of keeps me up at night is, what if tourists don't come to a destination because augmented reality has taken over your physical being of going to a destination? We see it happening today of how drones, augmented reality is becoming so sophisticated that people are not even knowing the difference between the reality and the augmented version. And I think for tourism, with increasing costs of fuel, safety issues, travel, these things are one of the major challenges. But I also look at it and saying, well, there's about 7 billion people in the world, 1 billion of them travel. So again, there's going to be new markets, new opportunities. And as Cape Town Tourism, we're looking at the digital space of saying how we can capitalize on that. How do we look at scattered DNA through digital and understanding consumer trends better? But more importantly, how do we create frictionless travel experiences in destination? And digital becomes a key element of that. And I think this is where any leader today needs to at least have some understanding of digital, or surround them with people who live and breathe digital every day, because you cannot avoid it.
And Enver, tell us, when you speak to aspiring leaders, what is it you tell them about how they should use social media?
Sorry, Nick, I couldn't hear that.
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm saying, when you speak to future leaders, what is it you tell them about social media? How do you advise them, should they use social media to build their own brand and to communicate?
Well, I think this is the beauty of social media. It breaks down traditional silos and offers blocks that used to exist between, somebody on the street and somebody sitting on the top floor in a C-suite. And social media becomes that tool. But people should also remember that social media is like a digital tattoo. Nothing goes away. And you need to be quite careful about what you say and how you say it and to whom you say it. But I think also is that it gives people a voice. It gives somebody unknown the ability to be able to converse on a channel with other leaders. And for me, it's whether it's on social media or in person. When you start building network lists, don't do a list just for contacts that will get you somewhere. Build it for a meaningful long-term relationship, because people are probably the most important thing in any form of relationship and for any leader. It's about the people that you surround yourself with, the networks you have access to, but it's about creating value for all of them. So for me, I look at social media as just a tool to be able to do that, to put your brand across, but also to engage with people as people. And I think that becomes probably one of the most unique things that most people kind of engage with now on social media, is about being authentic and being yourself.
Now, Enver, throughout your career, you've been a mentor to many future leaders. Can you maybe share with us a success story or two where you mentored somebody and that person took your advice to heart and went on to achieve success?
Well, I think there's numerous people, but I think a few that stick out for me is an ex-colleague of mine, Valma, who was a colleague of mine, and she was looking after marketing here at Cape Town Tourism. And what me and Valma then, because I think when I became CEO, I started also providing some mentorship and guidance as a leader normally does. But what I found amazing about the relationship, and it's something I do with most of my staff, I always look at saying, well, how can they be better leaders? How can they actually, do more? And actually, I want them out of the organization. I want them to be out there living the brand of Cape Town in whatever shape and form, as long as we've had a part to play in their future career. And today, Valma heads up Airbnb for Africa. And for me, I think that's just one of the examples of where, it's not about just being a leader because of the job you have, but it's about taking a genuine interest in people, believing in them, and also not holding them back when opportunities for them to be able to spread their wings are there. As long as you know you created the seed in them that has grown, and that seed will continue to grow because you believed in them, and they've then, of course, rebuilt the belief in themselves to be able to do better and be better.
And tell us, Enver, who are the role models of leadership and maybe books about leadership that you suggest future leaders should study and learn from?
Wow, I think there's so many. I love autobiographies from Raymond Ackerman through to Madiba, even through to Ashwin Willemse. Ashwin Willemse is an amazing story of how your circumstances in life does not predict your future if you can take control of it and take every opportunity that comes your way as that stepping stone. For me, there's even some amazing books by lesser known authors, just about ordinary people, of someone who used to live on the streets. And today, all that the person has is that he's got a little Boerewors stand. But that says to me, it's about perseverance. So it's not just the inspiration from global role models or even local celebrities that we are common with. For me, it's sometimes that story about an ordinary person, because we can, no matter how high or we go up in corporate world, is that at some stage we will fall. Even when we retire, we no longer have that title with us. And then we need to remember that we are still just people. And I think for me, listening to ordinary stories is probably the most inspirational role models, because it also humbles me to know that every tourist we get into the destination has the opportunity to change that person's life for the better. And I think that's what keeps me motivated and my team motivated to drive tourism to Cape Town.
Now, Enver, how can our listeners get hold of you? How should they connect with you? And how can they follow you?
Well, I mean, for me, the easiest way is always via LinkedIn. I think it's probably the best platform. And my handle is @Enver Duminy. And yeah, I mean, I respond as quickly as possible when I do have time. But what I also like to do, I also like to get other people's opinions of, what is tourism? And I use LinkedIn also as a listening tool. So as much as I also speak on platforms and share my thinking around thought leadership, for me, it's also about listening and following others and see kind of where their thinking is going.
And last but not least, Enver, can you tell us what is your greatest wish for the future?
Well, I think my greatest wish always for the future is that, we can mobilize every South African around a common goal like we had in the World Cup. And for me, it's still the one thing that when I look back is we've done so much great work in the run up to the World Cup. But over the years, we seem to have lost a lot of that good work. And all we need to do is sometimes just dust it off and resurface it and then kind of get a focus, a clear vision. I think we've, as a country, started focusing on what our differences are more than what our similarities are. And I think the minute we can get past that, we can start building South Africa back again to where it was.
Well, Enver, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and reminding us that we should aspire, inspire, and perspire, to use your words. And thank you for all your hard work to help us build a better future.
Nick, it's an absolute pleasure. And again, just from my side, thank you to you and your team and helping us with the World Cup. It's still something that we talk about fondly, and wherever we go in the world, it's something that we continue to be recognized for. So hopefully we'll be able to have another World Cup of some sort here.